the word became because technically I've been teaching since I was 14. But there's a difference between being and becoming. To be is to accept or to exist. And I could no longer accept what I was witnessing in urban education. So I got a little loud, very loud, and fired. It was for my babies, particularly my babies with learning disabilities. They were not getting the resources they needed and deserved.
Good evening. Educators do so much, some that is visible, but much that's unseen and unrecognized. This evening, I'm here to say, we see you. You give of yourselves to ensure your students open themselves to learning. And we recognize the remarkable work that you're doing. Valencia is an educator, a mentor, and much more. She's a woman whose life and words have touched, challenged, and inspired countless young people. We want your stories, like Valencia's, to be told, and we want your voices to be heard.
Millions of people. And that's why it's so important to take care of them. The Plough National Marine Sanctuary I mentioned before, it's proposed to be about 190,000 square miles. That's bigger than California. East Coast comparison, it's about the size of New England, plus New York, plus Pennsylvania, plus Maryland, plus Virginia.
Hello? Okay. Okay, so my name is Nora Shaoqi. I know some people in the room, but for the ones who don't know, I am an Egyptian archaeologist. So that means I also came from Egypt yesterday, so I'm a little jet lagged right now, so bear with me. So basically what I do is I dig for a living. Kind of like Indiana Jones, Lara Croft, but minus the sexy outfits, as you can see. But in my head, I look like Lara Croft. But anyways, I dig in remote sites all around Egypt and also in Sudan. So this image is actually from a looter's pit in a New Kingdom tomb in Sudan. And actually I look happy and stuff in this image, but an hour later, the roof collapsed on my team. So things happen, it's a little dangerous in the field. So I just wanted to kind of show you guys like a brief overview of what a day in the life of an archaeologist really is like. So I have workmen, gangs of them. That's how we work in Egypt. We need a lot of manual labor. The terrain is very hard to excavate in, especially in the areas I work in. They're very either wet or there's a lot of dirt. It's not just empty, like vast deserts of sand. And very important to note that we have a lot of tea on site. Egyptians love tea and love a lot of sugar, so they'll get you high on just sugar tea all day long. So what we do is we wake up super early on site. So we go for 2 months at a time, usually in our seasons, so usually a summer season and a winter season. We wake up at 4:30 in the morning. We have to catch the sun because it gets way too hot in Egypt in the afternoon. So we have to dig while it's cool enough for my workmen and to actually do the manual labor.
How you all doing?
Hi.
Fantastic. My name's Dan. I'm a guerrilla geographer. Guerrilla geography is radical, alternative, creative geographies, the kind of geographies that might surprise you in one way or another. I'm a former geography teacher, and I'm going to tell you about one project that I've been up to recently. So I'm a trained geography teacher. I've got a geography degree. I've done over 200 micro-adventures across the United Kingdom. I've walked 1,600 kilometers across all the national parks and all the cities in the UK. I've successfully campaigned over the last 6 years to make London the world's first national park city, which is a new kind of national park that breaks down boundaries between people and nature and thinks about how we need to properly respect and value urban life, and the potential of urban people to be nature conservationists where they live.
Access. And this is super exciting because as we move forward to mitigate and prevent plastic pollution around the world, we need big data sets like this with everyone's contributions so that we can look for patterns and trends and find easier ways to stop plastic. Now, of course, the highlight of my job is really coming out to speak to audiences like you. I don't think that I would find science rewarding if I wasn't communicating it with others. And at the end of the day, it's so inspiring being surrounded by such motivated people who have such a severe impact on their students and the messages that they hear about environmental dilemmas that they're going to soon face. So I know the issue of plastic pollution is very overwhelming and it can be really hard to talk about. But I want to emphasize to you all, this issue is not going to be solved by geniuses or high-tech equipment, but it's going to be solved by a lot of passionate people coming together and taking action within their own institutions, schools, homes, and communities. And really, we're all going to find ways to prioritize our planet over plastic. Thank you.
And multiply it by 10. And then we work really closely with communities, like I say, to craft solutions that will work in our situation. So human-wildlife conflict is one of those issues. We're learning a lot from projects that have worked on conflict issues in India, in East Africa, and these are Nat Geo explorers that have got experience with this issue. But we're working very closely with communities to see how we can do that in our area. And then we can remain committed to working with young people. We heard yesterday, one of the mantras was, show me the world and I will lead. And we try to stay true to that. So we expose students to the natural environment and hopefully they can become future conservation leaders. Thank you.
Negative environmental impacts. So for my Fulbright Nat Geo work, I decided to move to Taiwan, and I lived with the indigenous Amis tribe who have been using beetle net for thousands of years, and they seem to have healthier and more sustainable practices involving it. So a lot of my work included giving talks in Chinese with the community about beetle net and trying to understand their perspectives about it, doing field work about hearing stories from indigenous elders about how they use beetle net and preparing it, as well as collecting samples through citizen science and running analytical chemistry experiments to validate indigenous knowledge. What else was really exciting is my Nat Geo funded work helped support me making a documentary film and doing cultural research into the stories that the indigenous people had about beetle net usage. And what's really exciting is that since I was also a cancer policy fellow at the Ministry of Health, I was able to slowly have conversations with chief cancer prevention folks at the Ministry of Health and widen their perspective of beetle net to stop viewing it as a simple drug consumed by the working class and minority populations in Taiwan.
Refugees in the Alaska Native village of Newtok, a riverside village who is seeing its school building, its homes, and its histories falling into the sea. Earlier this year, National Geographic found America's first climate refugees on Ile de Jean Charles in southern Louisiana, where there too, Americans are seeing their histories, their homes, and their education falling into the Gulf. And just last week, Al Jazeera found America's first climate refugees closer to DC on Tangier Island in the Chesapeake Bay. By the end of this century, at least 420 villages, towns, and cities in the United States will be partially underwater, no matter how much we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions.
Our adventure started here. I was working at a recycling center in Brooklyn a few years ago, and I was literally surrounded by mountains of plastic. Every single day, thousands of plastic bottles.
And they do environmental and development projects. So maybe it's cleaning up plastic, or building schools, or building a road, or helping a disadvantaged member of the community.
The first thing maybe that they are self-learning.
Okay.
They start learning this kind of through watching the TV.
Oh, okay.
So the first challenge is for them that they do it spontaneously, and they would love to have someone who's expert to teach them more techniques, or maybe, to deliver some of his experience for them.
I've never even seen their local reefs before, so they were really thankful for the opportunity that we've given them to have a glimpse of how wonderful their marine environment is. So together with you guys, we want to bring this more into classroom.
Like the microbeads, they go down the drain, through the sewage treatment works, and potentially into our oceans. I found that 700,000 fibres come off our clothes in a typical clothes wash. Now imagine how many times you wash your clothes a year, then your streets, your town, your city. That's a huge proportion of fibres potentially going into the marine environment, making our oceans a big plastic soup.
Their brains when there's not enough food, and then regrow them, and then have babies and then die. But I'm not going to talk to you about any of that. You can go to my website or contact me later if you want to talk about my science. I've been thinking a lot in the past couple of years about how we can communicate, what we need to do to communicate as scientists to the public. And I've been talking to a lot of your classrooms, and I think there's a lot we can learn from the way that scientists study science. So I've been collecting data on animals for like 10 years now. But I've only recently realized that I can also collect data on myself. And I think there can be a lot of power to collecting data on yourself. By understanding yourself better, you're understanding your connections with the world better, and you can connect better to people, better to animals, and better to nature. And I think there's great power that can come from this.
From Hakana Hakana, we make music and art for nature, creating pedagogical contents for environmental education. Now we are living in La Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta in Colombia, one of the most biodiverse places of our world. In this big mountain, we can find all the tropical ecosystems, from the snow to the sea. From here, we learn and share knowledge with indigenous and local communities, artists, biologists, anthropologists, and musicians. We make bridges between these different forms of knowledge and make songs, illustrated books, videos.
Broad discipline. My particular corner of data science lies with environmental data, tracking and monitoring deforestation, water, mainly from satellite imagery. And I've worked at NASA and the Obama White House, a number of other big institutions, but I recently found that the place where I can be the most productive and helpful is by building the tools to enable journalists and students to tell their own stories from satellite imagery.
I've been talking to all you guys all week, so I'm excited, so clearly it's catching up. So I'm Stewart. I am a documentary photographer and filmmaker. Last month, I was in Bangladesh. I was working on a short film for National Geographic on climate change. I was working in the city of Chittagong. Chittagong, every single day, goes underwater. 70% of the city goes completely underwater. Well, not completely, but it gets flooded. So I want to show you guys an exclusive clip of a school that I shot.
Peninsula. I am an archaeologist, but I am also the director of this project called the Great Maya Aquifer. I direct a group of crazy guys, biologists, paleontologists, explorers, etc. that we are trying to figure out what is laying under the peninsula of Yucatan. 30 years ago, when we started all this mission, people look at us and say, well, these crazy guys are going into these black holes to see nothing. Well, this is what we see when we go down there. It's an amazing area. It's full of information, full of science, and we have discovered new species that we didn't know they existed. When we go lecturing into schools, the children look at us like, these guys are crazy. They say there were elephants walking in Cancun. And yeah, when they saw the bones, like this mandible of a gumful deer, an old elephant, they're convinced of what they can expect.
Plus D- to an A-, just by focusing on issues that are related to our ecology, our ecosystem, and having a Hawaiian prof teach Hawaiian students. So it goes a long way.
30 seconds or so. What do we talk about when we talk about these words? These are words that Christine and I have been in discussion over the last few days that we've been hearing a lot here. So if you could just take a quick moment for each of these words, explore, discover, empathy, storytelling. What do you think of when you hear these words?